Josie, it's a pleasure to chat with you about my adventures with Superman. Such a great show. Uh, I think let's start off with how grateful were you with the positive fan reaction to really a new, fresh take on really such a classic superhero?
I mean, I was over the moon with how much people fell in love with our Superman and our Lois and Jimmy. I've worked on a ton of these IP projects at this point in time, from Jurassic World to She-Ra to Superman. And, when you're working on these projects, you're being guided by what you are creatively thinking, but also what you as a fan would want to see. And you're hoping that there's other people like you out there who want to connect with this material the same way you do. So to be like, our favorite Superman is the big blue Boy Scout, the earnest guy next door who's a little shy, and Lois Lane, who's like taking names and kicking down doors and bringing that to the screen, and then just seeing so many people go, "Oh my God, I love them. This is what I've been looking for. This is the Superman I've been craving." Has been really, really rewarding.
I think that's where I've fell for Superman because I'll be honest with you, for the longest time and forever, just because that's just the way the release of films came out. Always been a Batman guy. And really, even though I read a lot of the material beforehand, it wasn't until really Rebirth when Dan Jurgens kind of took him back to the farm,
Yeah.
and it was the family Clark Kent
Yes,
that I
yes.
really, really fell for him.
Yeah.
So with my adventures of Superman, taking him even further back now, and just really, I feel like the heart of the show is the friendships that were blossoming and the relationship with Lois, and then with Jimmy Olsen. I felt like it was a chapter that I could really empathize with and just really really enjoy and watching him grow. What is your favorite version of Superman?
I mean, it's really hard because it's like there's a couple of touch points that me and my co-showrunners, Brendan and Jake, would just talk about all the time. Like, I'm a big fan of the Donner movie, the very first one. It's just Christopher Reeve is so pitch perfect as Superman, and it's just such a like incredible origin like movie essentially for him, where it's just like he's rescuing Air Force One out of the sky, but he's also rescuing a little girl's cat. And to him, they're both equal. I also think that as a kid of the 90s, I was treated with a lot of great Superman content. Like, I don't think it's going to be a shock to anybody who's read the comics that I'm a big John Byrne fan. I love Man of Steel. I love that reboot, which, yeah, bringing Mom and Pa Kent back in, bringing the farm back in. Um, and I really loved was growing up watching the New Adventures of Lois and Clark. um Terry Hatcher, Dean Cain, like, were my first like on-screen Superman and Lois, and so it was sort of this combination of like incredible sources that were all coming out around the same time that like really like my brain percolated in for like the early 90s. I was like, this is what Superman is.
Yeah, and it's great because oftentimes a lot of people when you think of Superman is just really his over his just his power level is incredible. We've seen it, and
Yes.
usually he's end game as far as
Yeah.
whatever whatever thing the Justice League is going through. But again, I have to go back to just kind of just the human side of him
Yeah.
and him learning to interact. And with that, I want to get into the comics a bit because you guys are really taking a personal story as far as Clark Kent uh, dealing with his first Christmas alone. And in the
Yeah.
first issue, we see how much of a big deal that is because of how people are interacting around him to that news.
Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit about why, that's the route you guys decided to take for the book.
Yeah, well, so I mean, for us, the pitch that like really got us picked up and greenlit as a show wasn't here's the big plot points and villains that Superman's going to fight. It was here's the romance and friendship. Like, we're going to pepper in the villains, don't worry about that. But the personal is the thing that's most important to us. So that was how we got on TV, was talking about that friendship, that trio, that romance. So for the comic, this was actually a story that we had talked about in season one with the writers in the room, but like there was never a place to kind of put it in. So when DC approached and said they wanted to do a tie-in book, immediately it was like, oh, we've got a story that's a little personal, just like our show, that can sort of stand alone in between seasons, but still tee up some things and still tie into what we're going to be doing in season two emotionally more than anything else. And you know, it just continued on the ethos of a show, which is this is not just a show about Superman. This is a show about Clark Kent. This is a show about Lois. This is Jimmy. This is all of their adventures with Superman. So just taking this personal track, seeing Clark's first Christmas without the Kents in the big city, when there's maybe some villains running around, just felt like the right thing to do.
And how important would you say his humanity is in making him relatable and making you really cheer for him because you really sometimes it's hard to like I was saying empathize with him without it. How do you balance that in the book and both in the series?
I mean, his humanity is, I think, what defines Clark Kent and Superman. You know, yes, he's technically an alien, but he was raised on the farm with mom and pa. He was a corn-fed Midwest boy. He moved to the big city to make his dreams come true. Like of all of our characters, Superman's kind of the most human. So for sort of keeping that in mind, a lot of it is, well, let's talk about those personal relationships because what makes us human isn't necessarily where we're born or our backgrounds. What makes us human is that ability to connect with other humans. It's those relationships that we create and foster with each other. So for Clark, that's always the most important thing for him is those relationships he's fostering with everybody. And the second most important thing for him is making sure that everybody is safe and feels cared for and feels loved. You know, that he knows that he's super strong. He's always a little worried that he's too strong and too big and he might be breaking things. But again, that's such a relatable human fear. He's not a god coming down to be like, I am perfect. I have figured it all out. This crystal father told me what things I need to know. It's he has no idea and he's figuring it out like the rest of us. So in the TV show, I think keeping the idea that he's learning and growing along with the audience of what Superman is important. And in the comic, we're going to see that as well, that he is going to learn a tiny little bit more about Krypton and the Kryptonian technology that came down to Earth, and also learn a little bit more about himself and sort of like how people perceive him and how he perceives the world. I'm trying not to get into like spoiler territory, but it's just keeping those themes up from the show, but like really getting to dive into them with a couple of new characters that we never got a chance to introduce on the show, as well as the main cast that we all love.
I really feel like that's what makes Superman really that special. I think that's what makes that S, that symbol of hope, even more prominent in society in general because he can reach such a vast audience.
Yeah.
How fun has it been for you to be able to play with some of these other characters, some of the side characters, some of the villains, give them a new coat of paint, and at the same time, not reinvent them, but kind of orient them in a way that even makes them a little bit more relatable as far as even villains.
I mean, oh god, as a big old nerd, it's been so fun to just be like, here's my favorite characters, and like here is like the core of them. So let's like tinker with them and change them around and let them fit our story. And it's been really great working with DC because like they've been so on board with so many of the changes we wanted to make, both in the TV show and in the comic. Like really like treating this like it's its own universe. So it was never, oh, you can only use this character because it's a Superman villain. It was like, all right, you have an idea for Deathstroke? Sure. All right, at Task Force X is going to be fighting Superman. Okay. Like the biggest like things they cared about was like, okay, let's just make sure the S is still the S. Like we've got the belt, we've got the colors. But when we were like, okay, we're gonna like change this character up, they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. So that's been like I think one of the most rewarding things about this is you know, as a kid, as a fan, you always have kind of those like fan canons in your head, or you always have those like stories you're telling yourself of like, okay, wouldn't it be cool if this happened with this character? So to grow up and be able to do that is really, really fun.
I know I have a great time just being able to take this and chat with you. I mean, just going from screen to comic book rack to talking with you, it's quite the privilege, and I quite enjoy it quite much. Speaking of fresh coat of paint, in the comic, we always want to shout out the artist, Pablo Collar. Tell me a little bit about how great his artwork is, and then also just in general how in the series that kind of the anime style animation has really helped in really showcasing that this is just a really fresh take on the franchise.
I mean, Pablo's artwork is gorgeous. Like when DC started talking to us or talking to me about writing the comic, they had some pages that Pablo had done on other things. I'm like, oh wow, this is incredible. And some of the idea was like we weren't going to get somebody to exactly match like image for image the way it looks on the screen, but because the show is so anime influenced, we thought, and I thought it'd be fun to have this comic that's a little bit kind of manga influenced. So I think you can see it in the pages, but like Pablo is using screen tone. He is doing the sort of like manga like outlines and things like that. Like he's kind of going for it. So we kind of wanted it to be I thought it'd be like a fun influence of like the show is a little anime influenced, the comics a little manga influenced. But Pablo's been just absolutely like knocking it out of the park. There's some scenes coming up with just Lois and Clark that like made me and like the editors go, oh, and like that's really, I think, again, the heart of our show is taking those like really lovely like character moments. And then he also can really hit the big action scenes, which is it's hard to find somebody who can do both the romance, the acting, the action, and the comedy. So I can't wait for people to see the full comic and the full like mini series we're doing, because it's going to really feel like a part of our show, but additive in a way.
Yeah, one of the funnest things I think about it all is with the new take on some of the characters and with the animations through as we're getting to know some of these characters, it's been fun to go, wait, is that so and so? Wait, that's not Slade, is it?
Yeah.
It could be, yeah, no, it is Slade, but
Yeah.
and different layers of appreciation, which as a fan, yes, everyone has their own takes, but sometimes they're very similar. In this
Mm.
case, it's very distinct, but also
Yeah.
very true to the character. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, I have to shout out our incredible design team. Like everybody who came on was a fan or was just so excited. So yeah, for us in the writers room, we're like, what's the core of this character? Let's write around that. And then, like I think Do Hong is the artist who did the first or Caroline Chow were the artists who did the first Slade design. And we're like, this is the most different Slade Wilson I've ever seen, but I love it. I love this pretty boy who's going to be voiced by Jerry. Like this is yes, let's go for it.
I got a couple minutes left. I cannot let you go. Being, as close as you are to Clark Kent, to the S, I gotta ask your opinion about, the latest, greatest image we saw from James
Mm.
Gunn about, our next live Superman. Give me your thoughts.
I mean, I feel like I'm that meme of like Otto being like, "Don't make me tap the sign," and the sign just says every Superman media is good because Superman's in it. I'm really excited for the movie. We haven't seen anything from it or read the scripts or anything, so this will be new to us too. But as somebody who's doing a fresh take on Superman and trying to modernize him, like I'm just really excited to see him getting the like spotlight he deserves. I think like as a Superman fan, I'm like, yeah, I hope this movie is great. I hope they make a million more episodes of our show. I hope that there's Superman comics. I hope that there's Superman video games. Like I'm crossing my fingers that this is the beginning of a Superman renaissance. So I'm excited to see what shape that takes.
It's funny you mentioned that because I'm thinking the same thing about my adventures with Superman because I'm hoping it really inspires a younger audience to say, that Slade character, like where have I seen him before? And then all of a sudden they're going into Teen Titans, and that's something that
Yeah.
they can dig into. I'm hoping it's a gateway to really get to know the characters a little bit more, and with the heart and with the animation, with the storytelling that you guys provide, I I don't see why not. So
Yeah, I
uh,
agree. You be in charge of Discovery Warner. Like, give us some more seasons, Manny.
yeah. Oh yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I was ecstatic to know that you guys got a second season.
Yeah,
So and then with really the hype that Superman's getting, and with what James Gunn had said a couple weeks ago at CinemaCon, the summer of Superman coming up,
yeah,
you have a book coming up.
yep,
I think the sky's the limit. I mean, and with the story, I mean, just with the storytelling, it's so great. It's
yeah.
one of the few shows. I mean, I'm so busy with shows that um sometimes I don't just keep up week to week, and I could not wait for the next episode to sink my teeth
I'm
into
so
it.
excited.
I'm such a fan. Josie,
Thank
thank you so
you.
much for your time. It means a lot to me to be able to, talk about Clark Kent, Superman, and everything that you're doing. So congrats.
Yeah, thank you.